Look, I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, I'm saying what everybody else says. I mean, we, most of us, I mean, there are people saying, I told you so, and those people could just like die for all I care. I hate people like that because I'm a negative piece of shit, and I've decided that no matter what, I'm always going to be negative. And then when things don't go right, I'm going to say that I knew. Nobody knew. Anybody with a brain believed that we maybe not we be a Super Bowl team, but anybody with a brain knew that or believed we would be better because on paper the players are better. Nobody knew that nobody was going to know how to play. Nobody knew that Sauce Gardner was suddenly going to go from first team All Pro to a spoiled, entitled brat who doesn't want to tackle anybody and doesn't want to take accountability or get better because he already started counting his money. Like, we didn't know that. We didn't know for whatever reason Brees Hall lost a step or two, and he's just a good running back, but he's not an elite running back. There was reason to think he was. Maybe it was the injury. Who knows what the reason was? But Brees Hall's not an elite running back. Brees Hall's just an okay running back. I mean, you know how you know that Brees Hall's just an okay running back? Because when you bring in Braylon Allen and you don't notice much of a difference, which has happened a lot this year, um, it's very clear that I'm not saying Brees Hall isn't good. He's really dangerous in space, good receiving running back. I'm not saying he's the problem, but I thought we had a superstar. I thought we had a game changing running back, and he is not. He's not a game changing running back. So that went wrong. Sauce Gardner just being meh. He's still probably one of the better cornerbacks, but he's not special. And he hurts the team in a lot of ways. So he's not as good as we thought he was. Obviously, the hollowing out of the defensive line, we've said it a million times, was more damaging than some people saw that coming, and some people didn't. But JJ getting hurt and Riddick not signing, but the defensive tackle part of the equation is just unexcusable. Like, why Quentin Jefferson wasn't a Jet, or like from last year, why he wasn't extended or brought back, is just astonishing. It's astonishing. Just irresponsible of the team. What's up, Wild Wave? Good to see you, man. Snowball saying, Jeremy, can we rally in Times Square for Woody to sell? Woody's not selling, guys. There's nothing we could do to get Woody to sell. There's nothing we could do to get Woody to sell. There really isn't. I mean, what would have to be done is something that's not going to be done because people refuse to do it. And that would be thousands and thousands of people would have to stop buying their season tickets. The problem is a lot of those season tickets, I don't even know if that would help because the TV money is so big. Um, but even if it did help, you're not going to get thousands of people to sell their season tickets. They won't do it. There are people that, for 30 years, there's corporations, companies that own tickets. They won't sell them. And one of the reasons is the NFL and each individual owner as a business is very smart. You know how it is. When you have season tickets, it's a seniority thing. The longer you do it, the better your seats get, the more perks there are. And everybody's terrified that if they sell their season tickets, well, in reality, they lose that seniority. And then so that's a reality. So if they ever want to buy season tickets again, they have to start over. And the other thing is they just literally believe that if they sell, they'll start winning, and then they're going to regret not having season tickets. There's this crazy, insane belief. So I think what's really brokenhearted is not just that we thought we were going to win. We thought we had a roster that can win. But on top of it, just to make it worse, we're a mess. Like, it's so much worse than, like, we're all blinded by how bad things really are. Like, this was our shot this year because everything is disgusting after this. There's like 30 free agents. We got holes all over the place. Like already going into next offseason, we have we have a serious hole at defensive tackle. We have a limitation. If we want to bring in a new head coach that's going to play a 3-4, Quinn Williams is not good for nose tackle. Like he's not good in that system. Like that's not going to work well for him because he's not a run stopper. And those three guys, if you play a 3-4, they really have to be good at stuffing. Stuffing the run kind of thing. It's not a good mix. Like if we brought in a coach that brings in a defensive coordinator and we go 3-4, the best option is to hope that Williams still has value and get a first round pick for him because he's just not a good fit for us. We've already designed a roster that's good for a certain system. So right there, we're saying, hey, if you want to come here as a coach, defensive coordinator, one of our best pieces, one of our best pieces is if you happen to be a coach that believes in a 4-3 system. So that's an issue, but that's not even close to what our big hole is. Our biggest hole is that we don't have any other defensive tackles. I mean, maybe LT3, but we need to see him play every rep now, or 70% of the reps now. Like they need to toss the season out of their minds. Like we need to stop this ridiculousness of they could win every game and win out or anything ridiculous. We need to start thinking of the future. The problem is that JD has nothing to gain from that, and the coaching staff has nothing to gain from that. They just want to look good and save their jobs. So what they're going to do is continue to try to win. But that's not what's good for the organization. Right? The new GM that comes in, because JD is gone, is going to want to see film on Olu Fashanu, on Malachi Corley, on LT3, on Watts, on McGregor. Like, they're going to want to see what they have. That's what's going to benefit them. What do we have? So I don't know if there was any justification from completely. I mean, I think Indianapolis did it. Is like the best move might be literally to fire Joe Douglas right now, to fire the entire coaching staff and bring an emergency coaching staff, like let Rex Ryan come in, or let somebody come in with the understanding of we, like you're a temporary guy. Like they did the Colts did that. They brought in Jeff Saturday. Do that. Like bring in Mangold. Say you're the coach, and tell him, like, would he take over? Literally, I'm saying this. Would he take over? No GM to tell him anything else and say, I'm hiring you on the condition that you play these players. I want all of our young players playing. Sit the freaking stars. I don't care. We're not trying to, not for the purpose of tanking even. We just want to see, I want to create a tremendous amount of film for the new GM to watch to determine what we have. See, that would be the best move for this organization if this organization was smart. The best move would be to bring in, to just who cares about this year? Just bring in some person and say, I'm going to pay you a lot of money to be the coach of this team, and you're going to do one thing. These are the players you're going to start. I want these players playing. And you're going to play, you can mix in the other guys. I don't care who leaves. I don't care who's mad. You don't have to bench Devontae. Like, Devontae Adams doesn't matter. He's gone. Right? We're not giving him $35 million next year, and he has no reason to stay. So he's gone. Garrett Wilson, you have to play because we're going to try to convince him to stay for the rebuild, for the new generation. So you don't want to piss him off. He still gets to play, but he could just play with Malachi Corley. And that's it. You want to play Xavier more, see if he's good, if he actually gets more opportunity, go ahead and do it. Now, we don't have a quarterback really to watch, right? Like Tyrod Taylor, we know what he is. So that doesn't do us any good. So I don't care. It doesn't matter if it's A-Rod or if it's Tyrod Taylor. The other kid, Travis is IR'd, so we unfortunately we can't look at him. But to me, it's all about let's create a whole bunch of film of all of our young players to see what we have. Like I don't think there's any more value or anything we could get out of this year than that. giving Olu experience. By the way, Olu was the second highest graded player for our team yesterday. So that's really good news. So Olu came in and actually played really good at left tackle. I think he had a 78 PF grade. That's really, really good news. Simpson was number one. So we have to extend Simpson. Don't wait till next year. Do it now. Go up to whoever the new GM is going to be and say, we got some good things to talk about. We got your left tackle and your right guard and your center for the future. Let them play 3-4 years together, like every other winning organization. Let's get an offensive line that plays together for years. We got 3 of the 5. AVT we could just sign on next year. If the AVT stays healthy the rest of this year and he plays well, and then next year has a good year, we could extend him next year and try to get 4 out of 5 of the offensive line to play for this rebuild year after year in the future. And try to, literally. And then whoever we get at right tackle, if we draft someone, hopefully we find that spot and it's somebody at a young enough age. If we could go 3 years with the same exact offensive line, I promise you that's the recipe. That's the formula. That's what we haven't done. That's what we need to do. If you want to have a real offensive line, it needs to be a group of players, a core that are together year after year. That's how great organizations, that's how winning organizations do it. Guy goes down or one guy leaves, you're replacing one guy. But 80% of the line is still there year after year. That's the formula. That's the goal. We have that. We might have something there. It's one of the few things we have. Obviously, you extend Garrett Wilson if he's willing to stay. I don't know why he would. And you lock in that WR1 spot, right? And you get that checked off. And you look on the defensive side and say, is there anything there? Will McDonald. Okay. He's going to be a pass rush specialist, no matter who we bring in, no matter what coaching system you use. Even if you go to a 3-4, he's fine for Will McDonald. Standing up, coming from a wide gap, no problem. So that's a guy that we could check off that we have. Screw the safeties. I don't know about Sherwood now. Maybe extend Sherwood if it's cheap. I don't care about linebacker too much. Williams is, Quincy is signed for a while. So, linebackers or whatever is not as big a hole or as big an issue as the defensive tackles. I don't know what JJ is going to be when he comes back, but he'll be under contract for a couple more years. So we'll get to see about him and see what he is. Obviously Reddick is gone. Reed is gone because we're not going to pay him. There's no point in paying somebody when you're going into a rebuild. Let me see what you guys are saying. Woody is a bozo. I know he is. The NFL is not going to take away the team from him. That's a dream. Yeah, none of that's going to happen, though, Billy. So we can't, we could sit there and we could say how much we wish it would. They're not dissolving the franchise. No one's forcing Woody to sell the team. There's no grounds. Okay, he didn't get caught doing racist stuff. He didn't get caught with a news reporter like in Washington where the girl was getting down on her knees and giving special favors that way for information. Like there's no controversy. There's nothing solid on Woody that would get you to be able to take his team away. And if you tried, he'd go all the way to the Supreme Court, and guess what? He's friends with a certain president, and he's friends with who own the Supreme Court. So they're not going to rule against Woody because politically he's in the right place as well. Not that he would need to be, because it's America, and you can't just take away someone's team because the fans don't think he's a good owner. Like you have to have cause. Unless you could give me anything that shows cause, I don't think you could take away Woody's team. He owns the team. So it's just not realistic. If it is realistic and it was possible, I would happily go there with you and be happy about it and say, yeah, get us a new owner. But we're powerless to that. No grounds, Jeremy. They've been a terrible franchise. That is not grounds, Billy. You can't force an owner out of their team for not being good at football. That's no grounds. That is not grounds. There's nowhere in the NFL rule book. There's nowhere. It's unprecedented. It's never been done. You cannot force the sale of a team. Maybe you could if there was evidence that the owner wasn't trying, if it was like neglect or something, benign neglect, and they were violating some kind of policy. But the problem is that Woody has tons of evidence that he did try. Like, you can't say he didn't try. He went like how would that look in a court case? Well, I went out, I got a Hall of Fame quarterback. 90% of my fan base wanted it. They cheered it and celebrated it when we got Aaron Rodgers. He goes, years before that, I hired consultants to find me a general manager. I mean, effort wise, it's not like he's neglecting the team. He's trying. He's just a buffoon and he's doing a bad job. You can't take away an owner for that. Like if you owned a business and the business was making money, but your food sucked, no, the only thing the customers could do is not buy your food. They can't force you legally to sell your restaurants. So I just don't know unless I'm wrong and there is a policy. I don't know what your point is. Like it's not realistic. Oh, the NFL should have a rule. I understand your frustration and anger, and I would love for Woody to be forced to sell the team. I hate his guts. I wish he would sell, but we could sit and say that all day. It doesn't do anything. I'm talking about real things right now. That like what do we need to do or hope for to have any chance of an organization. And the first thing the things I've been talking about is we need to find something marketable about this team, this organization right now that would attract a real serious candidate for GM. And to sit there and say, we have Simpson, we have Tippmann, and we have Olu. So we have the building of a real offensive line that could play together for years. You can make a decision on AVT, right? And then there'll be draft picks if you want to address right tackle next year in next year's draft. It's something. It's something to say, look, we have something. We have a WR1 and Garrett Wilson if he's willing to stay and we could extend him long term, right? So that's something. Offensive line, wide receiver. We could say we have a young quarterback we're going to look at. The odds are he's not going to be good because statistically a fifth round pick quarterback is statistically not going to work out. But we do have someone young on the IR that's going to come back and we're going to take a look at him. But but you know what? Sometimes a GM coming in with their coach, a new coach, they might like the idea of being able to clean slate with quarterback. They might like the idea of saying, we could find our quarterback. We could look at this kid or we could look at the draft. We might be able to do it, right? Pittsburgh seems to find Pittsburgh got Russell Wilson is playing pretty well and Fields wasn't playing horrible. So they managed to get average quarterback play. I mean, they're not superstars, but they managed to somehow solve the problem to get at least functional quarterbacks where they could win games. So it's not impossible if you bring in good, smart people. But the idea is you need to lure them in. You need to have something, right? And I think that with Simpson, Tippmann, and Olu now, and Olu playing well, I can't say it enough how big that is that he played well yesterday. I think that that's a good start, that at least we could start showing to any new prospective GM, we have what looks to be the core of a real offensive line that's young, that you can build over time. Because you cannot patch together an offensive line every year and expect results. You cannot. It does not work. You can pick an outlier and say, oh, Jeremy, it worked for that. It doesn't matter. Look at history. History says that not outlier, but the norm is teams that have an offensive line that play together year to year. Winning teams seem to have that. So it's not something that can be debated. It's factual. You can look at it. The evidence is there. I have videos from last year showing that data, proving that point. Nobody listened to me at that time. The team has a nice core, terrible cap situation. Well, the cap situation doesn't have to be terrible. Because the cap situation is if we could cut Rodgers in the offseason, we could pay the $49 million. We could pay the $49 million in 2025 and just take the $49 million hit. We have Tyrod Taylor to be a bridge quarterback and Jordan Travis, right? So it just means that next year's a rebuild year for the new GM. Like you're not going to compete for a Super Bowl. It's a new year, but we could eat up the cap. We could eat up the $49 million. And going into 2026, we're in great shape. Like, because then there's nothing. What would be left after Aaron Rodgers for 2026? I mean, obviously, if we extend Garrett, but we don't mind having a lot of money in Garrett, right? We might extend Simpson, but that's not going to be a fortune if we do it now. He's not a star now. No one's looking at him. He's not going to be a highly paid guard right now. That's why I'm saying lock him in now at a good price. Tippmann is still on the cheap for a couple more years. AVT, we have to make a decision about after next year. But if he's good, I don't think he's gonna, again, because of his injury history. I don't think he's bringing in 25 million or anything crazy. So we get to make a decision on that. But we'll have 3/5 of the line done. But we don't have a cap issue. Because Sauce Gardner is no longer going to cost 30 million a year. I don't even know if we want to re-sign him. If at the end of the year, maybe a new GM comes in and finds a team willing to trade a one for him. I think it might be a little iffy to trade him for just a one, because I'd rather have a GM and coach that come in that believe they can turn him back around and have have an first team all pro cornerback. But that's a decision they could make. That's an asset. Well, you have this guy that probably can get you a first round pick, or you could try to turn him back around like his first 2 seasons and have an all pro player, first team all pro. So this is the kind of thing that, what I'm doing here is I'm sitting here and like trying to put together the positives that can attract somebody to this job. It's not easy because Woody Johnson's the owner, and he's probably one of the worst owners in professional sports. So it's not easy, but money talks, right? If he finds a guy he likes, he can offer that guy and pay that guy a lot more money than anybody else is willing to pay him, right? So, it's just going to be a money thing. Like, why would anybody want to coach the Jets that's worth it as a coach? Because we're willing to pay them. How would we get Vrabel? We'd get Vrabel by overpaying him. Now, I know people will say, I don't want Vrabel. He's a defensive-minded head coach, and we need offense. It's not true. Great head coaches are not about defense or offense. It's not true. It doesn't have to be that way. Every single coach, Super Bowl winning coaches, don't have to be one or the other. Belichick was defensive coordinator. They won a lot of Super Bowls. He was a defensive coordinator. Pete Carroll was a defensive coordinator. He's a very good coach. I think Tomlin was for Pittsburgh was a defensive player, right? I'm pretty sure he was. It's not about that. You just have to get a good head coach that brings in a good coaching staff. Just get a good offensive coordinator. It doesn't matter. It's like the head coach doesn't have to be an offensive-minded head coach to have a good offense. He just needs to have a good offensive coordinator. And not only that, a good offensive coaching staff that's accountable, that's held accountable, disciplined, even not just the players, but the coaching staff, that they do a good job, that they're held accountable for what they're doing. He was good in Tennessee, Vrabel. I mean, he had Tannenbaum, or whatever his name, Tannehill, as his quarterback. And he was a real contender. With Tannehill, people were believing he was a good quarterback. No, he wasn't. Tennessee was an excellent coach team. They were a really well-coached team. I don't know how he did it with Keith Carter as his offensive line coach, but maybe Vrabel kept him in line. I don't know, but it worked. It worked. He was a good head coach there, and he's tough, and he reminds me of the guy from Detroit. He's tough. He had good, successful years at Tennessee. We need to stop sitting there thinking, like, people have all these ideas, like who else is there? If Vrabel's not good enough for you, who else is there? Like, who do you want then? Like the fact that Vrabel's even available, we should be on our knees praising God that he's even available, that an experienced head coach with a proven winning track record is available, is a freaking miracle for us. I mean, open up your checkbook and pay the guy and get him in here. Get us a real coach. Do it now. Do it next week if he'll come. Get him in here. Get everybody else out and bring him in. They'll probably keep Downing and Jeff and Carter. I mean, Jeff Ulbrich, yes, they said, it's on me and the coaching staff too, because we didn't get the team ready to play. I take accountability. I didn't get the team ready to play. That doesn't sit well with me. What do you mean I didn't get the team ready to play? We had 10 days off, and you're saying you didn't get the team ready to play. Really? What's your job? You're basically saying, I didn't do my job. It's my fault. Well, then what's the, how are we supposed to respond to that? What do you mean I didn't get the team ready to play? Why? Care to elaborate? What were you doing instead? Do you have a family event? Were you going out to eat or something? I want to understand. I want to understand what you were doing instead of getting the team ready to play. Just coach talk bullshit. I mean, I'd appreciate it more if he just came out and he said, we're a terrible football team. He goes, we blew it. We're a terrible football team. The culture in our locker room is terrible. Everything has to change. Everything has to change. It's a terrible football team. These guys quit. He's saying they didn't give up. They didn't give up. The whole game. Oh, they've played hard till the end. Played hard till the end. The whole game was a give up. The whole game was a team that had given up. That team didn't come in ready to play. That was a team who has already given up that came into play. That was a team that all have their own agenda. Sauce is worried about his new fancy suits and his golf game and his video games and Sauce and his branding. He already started counting his contract last year. He was talking about $30 million. It already became not about football with him. And didn't already give up. Sorry, but since Aaron Rodgers came into this building, everything about this rebuild went to shit. Sorry, but it's just the truth. All of a sudden, everybody's got all big, even though we hadn't done anything. I mean, and to me, if I'm a coach coming in, I don't want to deal with Aaron Rodgers. I got to deal with this freaking head case that thinks he's like God's gift to the earth. What has Aaron Rodgers done? He's a below average quarterback right now. We think he's really good because our standards are so freaking low. But look at the numbers. He's not that good. Are you kidding me? He's not good. Like, how was he good yesterday? If he didn't have the name Aaron Rodgers on his back, and it was just some guy named Smith, are any of us saying he's a good quarterback? I mean, he had a couple of good games. He had a good game against New England the first time we played them, and he had a good half against Houston. And people are arguing, oh, but he's still good. He's still best we've had. Well, that's a really low bar. He's not good. He's inconsistent. Was he good against Denver? Was he good yesterday? Was he good against Denver? It was okay against the Niners. He was okay. Everybody's acting like he was. No, it's because our standards are so low. We've had such bad quarterbacks. We think he's so good. He's not that good. He really isn't. Has he had a fourth quarter drive, a big important fourth quarter drive where he's brought us from behind? Has he done that yet? He hasn't. He put up 6 points against Arizona. Someone said, well, Arizona only gave up 9 points last week, Jeremy. Well, did you see who they played last week, Arizona? I don't really count that as the same thing. I mean, it's like, it's Aaron Rodgers, not Caleb Williams. Sorry if I expect us to get a touchdown. Just too hard for him. We get into the red zone, he can't do it. He's just lost that ability. He can't do it. He can't process fast enough. Conklin was wide open. There's a play in that red zone where Conklin was wide open. Aaron Rodgers is not the same guy. He doesn't see the field anymore. He doesn't. He also tries to force the ball to Davante Adams. There were plays where he did that, where he didn't come close or it was covered, that Garrett Wilson was open. But he was trying to get it to his buddy to get him involved. You can't have that. You need a quarterback who drops back, finds the open receiver, and throws it. And that's it. I don't care about anybody's feelings. One day we'll talk about the 8 games we had Davante Adams on the team. And by the way, he's going to go somewhere else. He's not going to be that great. He'll have a few good games, but he's not going to be that great. He's done. Stick a fork in Davante Adams. You heard it here. I don't care where he goes. Unless he goes to like Kansas City or something. He's done. The big numbers are done. You're not going to see Davante Adams ever get over, 1,400 yards 10 times. It's done. He's not that guy. He's not that guy. Most likely he goes somewhere and he gets 800-900 yards receiving next year. And that's his final hurrah. His looking trophy. Lonely. Yeah, the Lombardi Trophy is lonely, and it's going to stay lonely for a long time. The best thing that could happen with Aaron Rodgers is he retires. I agree. Take the $49 million cap hit. You take it accelerated, all in 2025. You clear the slate clean for 2026. You start over again. It's over. You're not gonna fix what this team is now. I mean, I know there are some people left still doing it. We still have this. We still have that. We could get the right coach. We could do. No, it's over. You're not gonna fix this. Not with this core. The truth is, Sauce Gardner probably needs to move on. The problem is his stock is in an all-time low. We need him to start playing better so we can drive up his value. If he plays better in the next 5, it gets a little bit more respectable, then maybe we could still get a first-round pick for him and maybe a first and a third. Maybe we could still get something for him because he still has a couple of cheap years left. Still 2 years of team control, which will make him maybe a valuable asset. It is time to move on. It is time to get draft capital. And not all for 1 year. You can't have 4 number 1 picks and 3 number 2 picks, because then you can't pay them all. So you have to spread it out. You have to get like a first this year and then your second the year after. Or the third the year after. You have to spread out the draft capital. I mean, whatever. The truth is, you could take it all now and then you could trade it, right? You could always wait to the day of the draft, combine 2 third-rounders and move up to the second round to get a quality player, or you can always just trade it. You could say, I'm going to trade this year's third for another team's, next year's second. There are teams that do that all the time because they're ready to win. They want the pick now, and they're willing to give away a better future pick. So there's ways to do it. But you have to accumulate as much draft capital as possible right now. You're not winning with this team. 30 guys can leave, and I guarantee you at least half of them will leave regardless of what money we were to offer them. They're going to leave just to get out of this fucking cesspool. That's what. It's a cesspool. If I was a player, I'd be doing everything possible to get out of this shithole. It is the shithole of the NFL. I cannot imagine a player wanting to play in this shithole. I can't imagine a worse place to play. Even if they're a bad team and they're no longer good. Play in Tampa. Get a house in Boca. You know what I mean? At least you don't have to deal with the weather in the winter. I mean, there's no, I mean, how many shitholes are worse than the New York Jets? Buffalo's freezing cold and everything like that, but at least you get to be part of a winning organization. Hire Cliff Kingsbury, draft Jalen Monroe. The problem with Kingsbury is that he didn't do very good as a head coach in Arizona. And now Arizona looks a lot better without him. So it's hard to justify that. He seems to be an offensive coordinator. But in his defense, some guys get better their second chance. They learn. Maybe he just didn't hit it off with Kyle Murray, which we know is true. And maybe he'd hit it off with the next guy. I don't know. He's done. Jeremy thought it was a good idea to trade Adams at 2 to 6. What? He's done. Jeremy thought it was a good idea to trade for Adams at 2 to 6. I don't know what that means. I don't think Devontae Adams is done from the sense that he can't help a team. I think that he's done. He's not an elite receiver anymore. For 3 years, Jet fans were clamoring over him because you were thinking of the guy for Green Bay who was an elite wide receiver. I'm simply saying he's not that elite wide receiver anymore. That's all I'm saying. Me saying that next year he'll get 800 to 900 receiving yards is not a bad thing. That's not me saying he sucks. That's me saying he's no longer an elite receiver. But I could see him going somewhere and helping a team. Buffalo would probably love to have him, right? I mean, or, I don't know, Kansas City. They got DeAndre Hopkins. Imagine getting on the other side Devontae Adams. I mean, there are teams that he would be a big help for. But but he's no longer an elite guy. In other words, we're not paying him the $35 million next year that, the team option. And nobody's going to trade for the right to pay him $35 million. So we know he's not worth $35 million. And I don't think anybody would pay him much more than 20, to be honest. I just don't think the production is there anymore. It's common. Come on, we've been around. We know. You have NFL football players' primes don't last that long, and typically after you flipped around a couple of teams, it's over. Like he's never going to be the guy that was at Green Bay. He's been at the Raiders, the Jets. He'll be on his third team since Green Bay. It doesn't work out very well. It's not pretty. Unless you leave very early for some reason when you're still very young, it doesn't typically work out. If he's on his fourth team in 4 years, since Green Bay, and then all of a sudden he's on his third team, I mean, in 2 years or whatever it is, that's a big red flag. But it doesn't matter because he won't be a Jet. So what do we care? What does it matter if he's not going to be a Jet? Oh, you're saying no. Woody thought it was a good idea to trade for Adams. Yeah, I mean, uh, it was a little too late. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, if we had a winning record and things were going well, he could have been a nice piece. If we had never signed Mike Williams to begin with, and we still were truly in need of a wide receiver, that was the thing no one realized. We technically, skill-wise, weren't in this desperate need for a wide receiver. Lazard was playing really well. We had Mike Williams. We just weren't using him. And now it's like Devontae's in the same situation. He's really not being used anyway. I mean, it's just that it doesn't seem to matter to have multiple weapons when you have a quarterback who doesn't seem to be able to use them anymore. The only guy that seems to flourish in our system at all, that seems good at all, is Garrett Wilson. And I feel bad because I just kind of think that if Garrett Wilson was on any other team, he'd be so freaking good. Like, think of how good Garrett Wilson has to be. He's the only one that's able to succeed in this cesspool. Like, Breece Hall's been dragged to nothing. Sauce Gardner's been dragged to nothing. Like, they've all been dragged down by this team. This organization has dragged them down to mediocrity. Right? No matter who you are, AVT dragged down to mediocrity. Like, every guy that we thought was a superstar is dragged down to mediocrity, except Garrett Wilson. Like, Garrett Wilson is the only thing. So that's why we have to sign him if we can. He might absolutely refuse. He might say, there's no way. As a matter of fact, trade me. Or else I'm going to hold out, or I'm going to be the laziest player and the worst locker. Like that. I mean, like, he might say that because it's so, you know what I mean? But, like, think of how good Garrett Wilson must be to be the only one that's not a shit show. I mean, DJ Reed's pretty good, but he's been sliding a little bit as of late. He's been slipping a little bit, and he is getting up there. He's been around the league for a while. So that's why we can't make a big extension for him or whatever, because he needs to be on a team that's ready to win. Because he's probably got a couple of years left until he starts to really decline. So, I mean, Garrett Wilson is like remarkable. He's actually has flourished in the worst possible situation any player could be in, and that is New York Jets. We are a disease. We are an absolute disease. We are such a disgusting, trashy organization. We are just the bottom. We're bottom feed. That's why washed up players come to us. Tyron Smith. Washed up guys. Poor Morgan Moses. He's like, poor guy. He's like a warrior. Playing in all this pain. For what? For this shit team? We don't deserve him. We do not deserve him. Laken Tomlinson's having a much better year. Just had to get rid of the green. I was saying for 2 years, why can't we just move Becton? All the last year we had him. I was saying, why can't we move him to guard? I said he clearly can no longer handle the wide gap. He can't get out there. He's not fast enough. He lost that because of his bad knees, right? Like his bad knee. So I said, but he's still throwing guys around, like in preseason last year. I was like, why don't we move him to guard? Nah, you can't do that, Jeremy. Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, Jeremy. He's too big to be a guard. You can't, Jeremy. Oh, it's a different skill set, Jeremy. Now the Eagles, of course, moved him to guard, and he's much, much better. I mean, like, I'm so tired of it. I don't know what I'm more frustrated with. The fact that the Jets didn't do it, or the fact that I had these guys in my ear, these other people that really believe they know everything about football. I'm not going to name names. They believe they know everything. And they tell me all the time, no, Jeremy, like they're my teacher. You can't just move Becton to guard, Jeremy. And then what happens? Philly signs him as a guard and he's good. We had him the whole time. So sick of it. So sick of it. I'm not letting people get away with that anymore. Now they have to explain themselves. Explain to me why a guy who is potentially a very good tackle, got a lot of leg injuries, can no longer move fast enough to play tackle, can't be stationary on the inside and still be that strong guy that pushes people around, but do it at guard, where they don't have to worry about the speed of a defensive edge. Explain to me why a player can't be coached to do that. We saw Olu step into it. We saw Mitchell step in and do it. We won with that alignment. We won against Houston in the second half with that alignment of all tackles. So don't tell me tackles can't play guard. To me, a tackle who could no longer move fast enough and can't handle a guy coming around the edge should be moved to guard. As a matter of fact, what they should have done is they should have moved Smith to guard and Olu should have played left tackle. Because Smith would probably be fine on the inside because the reason he's not good anymore is he's getting beat by the edge going around him because he's not fast enough to get out there anymore. Why am I not in charge, guys? Yeah, it doesn't matter. He became, right. Becton said, I'm a left tackle. Yeah, but it wasn't up to Becton. If we said to him, the only way you're playing is guard, he would have played guard, right? I mean, he would have had no choice. I mean, but then he went to Philly and he was suddenly willing to play guard. Why? Because it took him like so long to realize. I mean, and the thing is, even if that's the case and that Becton wasn't willing to play guard for us, I still resent the fact that people told me I was wrong. Because they didn't say, oh, you can't move him to guard. He says he's a tackle. He's not willing. That wasn't their reason. They told me he couldn't. They said that technically I didn't understand football enough and that you can't simply play guard if you're a tackle. Well, I say bullshit. I say bullshit. I'm not saying you're going to be good at it and know all the plays and know all the formations right away, but don't tell me you can't take a really good tackle and turn them into a guard if you coach them. There's nothing technically about it that you couldn't do it unless you were a very small tackle that only relied on speed that to get edges that were coming around the ends and you weren't strong enough to play on the inside. But that was not an issue with Becton. We knew he was strong. We knew he could throw people around. We knew he had he could be a stationary guard or a stationary offensive lineman, that he had a good foundation. His issue was never run blocking. He was a beast. He was throwing people around. His issue was guys would run around him. That was the issue. So it made no sense that people told me you can't move him to guard. If your argument is, Jeremy, he wouldn't have been willing to play guard for us, fine. But that's not why I was told I was wrong. I was told I was wrong because I was told that I didn't understand the differences of a guard and a tackle. And I say I do understand the differences. And I say that doesn't mean just because there are differences that an athlete can't do it. When you were a kid, did you ever say, well, I can't line up on that side of the street in two-hand touch football. I can only line up over here and go out for passes. Did you say that, or did we all play every position? In high school, they play every position. In college, they move around and play different positions. Suddenly, magically, these top-notch, best athletes in the world can't handle. I'm used to standing on the outside and doing this and going for pass blockers, and suddenly I can't be in between two guys and blocking someone that's in front of me. Like, give me a break. Give me a break. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Love you, Coach. Snowball. Project on. Yeah, Becton had no choice, but the point was, it wasn't about whether Becton had a choice or whether he would have played for us or not. I was told that Becton couldn't play guard. I was told it was a different position. And it wasn't, Jeremy, it's not something he could do, even if he was willing to. That wasn't the reason that they told me I was wrong. They didn't tell me, oh, he can't play guard because he doesn't want to. They said, Jeremy, he can't play guard because you don't understand the difference between tackle and guard. And I say, you were proven wrong when you said that because he's doing well at guard. And I was right when I said he should be a guard. He no longer is fast enough to block anyone. It wasn't about whether or not he was willing to do it. My point is that he would be a good player if we put him at guard because he had the skill set to be a guard. He no longer had the skill set to be a tackle, but he had the skill set to be a guard, and I saw that, and I was right. That's the point. But Mr. Know-it-alls had to come in and say, you don't understand the technical differences between a tackle and a guard. Well, apparently I do, because I was able to scout and determine that Becton would have been able to play guard way before the Eagles signed him to play guard. I was saying it the year he was with us. He should be a guard. The year he was with us, I said, he is a guard. He is now a guard. He is no longer a tackle. Because of injuries, he no longer has the speed to play the position of tackle. But he's still strong enough, and he has a strong enough foundation to play guard. Because he could still push people. He could still throw people. He just can't get to the outside if you have a wide gap edge coming in around him. That was the only problem with him. That's all I'm saying. Is that everyone's got to get out of these rules in their head about football. Because people could play different positions in football. I love the guys out of college that say, and me and Tom were there in Alabama, and 90% of the players were saying it. When you'd ask him, do you think you could play 3-4, 4-3, you could play this or whatever he was playing? Tom was asking him, can you play dime or can you play this or that? Can you play outside the box, inside the box, or whatever? Every answer from the good players was the same. I'm a defensive player. I play defense. Tell me what you want me to do and I do it. I play defense. Of course a 21-year-old is going to say that. They better say that. Because when I played football, I didn't sit there and say, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that. When you were a kid playing football, you did everything. When you were playing baseball, you did everything. You did everything. You know, if you sucked in the infield, they made you go to the outfield, but you wanted to play in the infield. And every infielder, if you were a smooth infielder, you telling me you couldn't go to the outfield? Maybe you had to shag some flies to get used to judging the ball. But within shagging 5 fly balls, you were an outfielder. It doesn't magically get that much harder when you go up levels. It doesn't. Not as if you're coached. And that's why you see players do it. And that's why the good athletes do it fine. Because it's not that big of a deal. If you're an athlete, you're an athlete. That's why most professional athletes could have played other professional sports. Because if you're an athlete, you're an athlete. When we were a kid, this is the same kid that was the best in every sport on your block, right? Or in your school. It was the same kid. They were better at everything. The best baseball player on my block was also the best football player. He was also the best basketball player. Every time. In my school, in any group of people. An athlete's an athlete. Utilize your athletes. It's not that freaking complicated. And I understand that and I'm not saying that we had the choice of making Becton a guard. I mean, I don't know how he would have reacted in that. Would he have refused to play? I mean, he ended up leaving anyway. Would he have refused to play? If we said, we need you to play guard, you suck at tackle. You're no longer a tackle. Would he have refused? Would he outright said no? I have no idea. But it was the right thing. Like in the brain of the coach, it was the right thing. It's what a coach should have identified. Like if they didn't know that, if they weren't seeing that, but who's never played in the NFL, never coached, it was so obvious to me that he should play guard. Just because it was so simple. He clearly couldn't play tackle anymore, but he clearly could still run block. So it was so obvious. He can't move anymore. Move him to guard. You don't have to be as mobile as guard. I'm not saying you could be a cripple, but you don't have to be as mobile if you're a guard because you don't have to be as fast. You don't have to shuffle to catch a freaking speed, 4.5 or 4.4 edge, running edge that's 280 pounds or whatever coming around the end. Like, sure, I understand. He fucked up his ankle or his knee or whatever it was. He had injuries in his legs. He was slow. Will McDonald would have around him every time. I get it. Okay, but stick him at guard. because he's still a big, fat, strong motherfucker who can handle defensive tackles. And I think that was fairly obvious. I mean, I don't think it was like brain surgery. Like to figure that out. Like, what do you do? What do you do with a super strong, powerful offensive lineman, but is not fast enough to cover the edge? Like, what do you do with him? You move him inside. You move him to the inside. I mean, Tigo didn't think that JT Latham was fast enough, not just that he wasn't fast enough to step to the outside, but he thought that based on his technique, he'd be a better guard. He was wrong. JC Latham not only is playing tackle, but it turns out he's playing left tackle, which is hysterical to me. I mean, that's the funniest thing in the world, right? Because we were all talking about how we couldn't draft him because he was a right tackle, and now Tennessee is using him as a left tackle. But that's how. But to Tigo's credit, like not, even though he was wrong about this one particular player, his mind is in the right place. He said, this guy's technique, this guy is able to lock up, this guy's able to push people around. He's got a good foundation, he's strong. I just don't think he can handle people coming around the edge. So that's a smart way to think if it's true. If it's true, and he can't handle people coming around the edge, if he's not fast enough, the answer is not to cut him and say you can't play football anymore. The answer is to say you got to try playing guard because you don't have the speed to play tackle. I mean, I just think it's just so fucking common sense. And yes, I see Project Dom, you were all over JC Latham. I mean, you were right and Tigo was wrong. Because he is fast enough to, I don't know how he's doing exactly this year, but the fact that he's playing left tackle is pretty incredible. And that's a pretty good amount of trust. But at the end of the day, if he wasn't able to handle the fast rush, if guys were running around him and he didn't have the footwork, the answer would have been either he needed more coaching and development for the footwork, or the answer would have been Tigo would have been right and he would be better as a guard, right? I mean, like if he just simply couldn't do it. I don't know what made Tigo think he couldn't do it. He talked me into it once when we were looking at film. I forgot why. But again, we're looking at 1 game, 2 games. Dom looked at the last 8 games and saw the growth and said, no, he's better and better every week. And he definitely can handle the speed rushers. And that was the key. There was never a question of whether he could handle the guy that's standing in front of him. His technique was great. His handwork was great. He got position. He got the inside. Everything was great. His arms not being knocked out of the way, like he had strong hands or whatever. Like all that technical stuff he was good at. It was just a question of, and I keep blaming Tigo because it was only Tigo that put that in my head, was did he have the footwork to handle the speed rush? If Tigo came in, he'd be so mad. I didn't say that. Oh, yeah, you did, buddy. You did. You were very, very outspoken that J.C. Latham needed to be a guard. Anyway, getting back to the point, I want the kind of coach that doesn't take any shit, by the way. Like, I just want the kind of, that's a Vrabel. Vrabel's going to say, you're playing this position or you're not playing. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, you have to have a coach that's that strong. You have to. Even if it hurts the team a little talent-wise on the field. More important than the talent, the coach has to be in control. The coach has to be in control. Look at Andy Reid is in control. Right? No one argue. There's no arguing with Reid. Even Mahomes doesn't run that team. Mahomes doesn't run that team. Reid does. I always think Parcells because we had him as a coach, so let's take the greatest coach we've ever had. Right? I mean, I don't know if there's an argument against that or whatever, but I think Parcells was the best coach the Jets have ever had. Parcells, you didn't argue with him. If Parcells told a running back he was a fullback, you're a fullback. If he told a fullback you're a tight end, you're a tight end. If he told a tight end you're a fullback, like there was no arguing with him. At the end of the year, you can go somewhere else when you're a free agent. But if you wanted to play, because if you argued with him, you were benched. He was like, okay, in 1986, when the year the Giants won the Super Bowl, the Giants at like week 10, 11 of the season cut I don't know if he was their number one receiver. He may have been their number two receiver, but he was one of their top three receivers. Like, he was a real name. And Parcells just cut him. The year, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. They went on to win the Super Bowl. He cut one of their players. It's like cutting Lazard. You're cut. Just cut him. Because we don't know why. I mean, back then there was no social media. Or at least I wasn't enough of a football fan to be, even if there was some place you can go, like magazines, or find some forums in 1986 that would explain what was going on. You didn't have information like that. We were perplexed because I was a New York fan. I mean, I was a Jet fan, but I also liked the Giants back then. I used to watch both teams play a lot. And we were perplexed. I went to my friends who were more Giant fans. I said, what the fuck? Why did we just cut that guy? I don't know if it was Butch Johnson or something like that. If I looked up the roster, like an 86 Giants roster, maybe I could figure it out, like who it was that he cut. Like, you could look at the stats and see a wide receiver that only played 10, 11 games and then magically disappeared. But he cut somebody. He cut somebody because, getting back to the point, is that Bill Parcells was in charge of the New York Jets. He was in charge. The players weren't in charge. There was no player bigger than Parcells. And Parcells certainly didn't allow any player to be bigger than the team. He had his favorites, right? He had his favorites. You know, he came to love Phil Simms and he came to love Lawrence Taylor. They were his guys, but they didn't control him. They respected him, and he respected them. And he trusted them to be leaders on the field. Didn't come overnight. Parcells didn't just magically hand the baton to either Phil Simms or Lawrence Taylor. It was earned. They earned their leadership. That's another thing. We just put C's on people's chests or on their arm. Like, Zach Wilson was made a captain. Like, what the fuck? You really think Zach Wilson was ever a captain? You think he was a leader? Was Zach Wilson? I mean, that tells you everything you know about our coaching staff or about this team, about the culture, that they saw Zach Wilson as a captain. How can a kid who's learning the game and developing be looked upon as the captain? Yeah, you'll say the position. He was a quarterback. Well, it shouldn't be based on position. It needs to be the guy in the huddle or the guy that's out there on the field that's just the leader, the guy that people listen to and respect. That's who the captain is. Captainship is earned. When Phil Simms went on the field, they listened to him. The players around him respected him. If you knocked him down with a late hit, Jumbo Elliott was going to come and step on your ankle. They respected and protected him. Remember Zach Wilson, late hit? McGovern just walked away like he didn't even see it. Van Rod, those guys didn't even care because there was no respect for him. How do you make him a captain? How do you make him a captain? I don't know. But all I know is right now, Aaron Rodgers has to go. And we need to find a new captain. We need to find a new leader on the offense. But I'm sure, I mean, the first thing that has to happen anyway, above that, and Dom C said it, and he's right. The first thing that has to happen, the focus is, everyone's talking about coach. I shouldn't even talk about coach. Who's going to run this football team? Right? Is it gonna be a general manager? Or is it gonna be a vice president of operations who hires a general manager? Is he gonna go out and get a consulting firm? But we need to know who's gonna be in charge. Don't hire a coach and then hire a GM. That's really stupid. Hire the GM, and we need to somehow I don't know if it's possible, but if Woody would just stay out of it. If you trust somebody to run the team, you're our GM, you're our VP of operations, whatever it is, then you need to get out of their way and allow that person to find a coach. And we might hate it, we might scream, and we might curse because it might not be a coach that we like. We all got to stop pretending we know. There could be a potential Hall of Fame coach on any football team right now in some weird coaching position, or a coordinator that we're not seeing. We don't know. And the best candidates, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, might be the biggest bust ever as a coach. We don't know. Because it's like, just like in real business, When sometimes you get promoted and you suck at your new job because that's not where your skill set is. You know how many times I've seen the best developer in a company get promoted to now he's the manager of the developing team. No longer writes code, no longer develops, he manages. But he has no managerial skills at all. None. Companies will promote someone who's never even taken a managing or leadership class in their life. It's like, you're a good developer, you're the best on the team, you get to be promoted. Now your company has you just lost your best code writer, and you got a shitty manager. It's the same thing in the NFL. It happens all the time. Just because you're on a winning team with a good offense or good defense and you're the coordinator doesn't make you a good head coach. It doesn't. Because you're working for a head coach, and that's the guy who may have created that great culture. We don't know if you're capable of creating a great culture. We saw it in Robert Saleh. It's a disaster, the culture. He created a horrendously bad locker room. It might not be all his fault. It might have happened. It might have been a better locker room until A-Rod showed up. It might not have been. I don't know. But the truth is, when a new GM comes in and when they find a new head coach, I don't know how that person could really come in and be in control if Aaron Rodgers is still there. And if he is, I think you have to have someone that's strong enough to say, you don't have a voice. You're a football player. You're not even a top 20 quarterback. You're like 23rd, 22nd, whatever you are. I don't care how many years you've been playing. This is going to be our system. If you don't want to execute it, then goodbye. I'll find someone who will. Aaron Rodgers is not a good offensive coordinator. Like, he's proven it. We thought he was going to be. We thought we'd be fine because A-Rod's on the field. He'll call the audibles. He'll do all the right things. He doesn't. He doesn't. We're 3-7 with him. He doesn't. You saw the game yesterday? He doesn't. He doesn't put us in the best position every play. He doesn't. Or either that or he physically can't do it. But either way, he cannot be in charge anymore. He cannot have any authority at all. He could be the veteran that tells players what to do, if he wants to prove he's a good leader, a good leader. Maybe he's the captain because he's a good leader. But he can't be the guy that's calling the shots. And no one could tell me, oh, but it's not true. He hasn't been calling the shots. Yes, he has. Yes, he has. Why is Hackett still on our team? Why is Hackett still on the team if he's not calling the shots? What do you think that's about? Why do you think Hackett was our OC coming into the year? Why does he still have the OC title? That is 100% Aaron Rodgers. 100%. We got a new game plan guy and a new game caller. He's calling the plays and doing the game plan. What does Hackett do? He's there to appease Aaron Rodgers, and that is the recipe for failure. And the evidence is we're 3-7. It was the worst. I'm not saying I didn't want Aaron Rodgers. So I'm not even pointing fingers, but we have to be able to admit it was the worst mistake we ever made, and it destroyed our rebuild. We would have been better off getting Russell Wilson or Fields or any of these guys that Pittsburgh managed to get. We would have been better off. Tyrod Taylor, better off. Baker Mayfield, better off. We could have gotten the guy I said we should have gotten that everyone laughed at me that's still not playing, the kid from Washington, who had a decent first rookie year, tailed off a little at the end when the team got some injuries, and now he's not even playing. Any of that would have been better. Any of that. If we would have just kept our picks, kept the focus on what we were doing, would have been better. Nothing could be worse than what we did. And it's easy to say that in hindsight. Yes, I'm saying it in hindsight. From where I'm sitting right now, looking back at it, how could it have been worse than what we did? Everything we did is proven to be wrong. We're 3-7. It's not injuries. We're 3-7 because the culture of the team sucks. Because we keep saying it's such a talented roster. It's not. It clearly isn't. There might be some individual players who are good, but talented roster has more than just some talented players. It's about playing as a team. Together, do they gel into quality? They don't. They don't. Even the offensive line doesn't play as well as the individual players play. When you look at the PFF grades and you look at them individually, they're not as good as a team, as a unit, as they are individually. There's something lacking. There's something that's just not there. And sometimes it is, so you get to see what it looks like. Like sometimes it is cohesive, and there's a hole a mile long. Look at the Corley play where the idiot dropped the ball. The other 10 guys on that play have the right to be pissed at Corley because the other 10 guys executed perfectly. Perfectly. It may have been our best play as a team. If you want to say, what does a team look like? What was our best play where everything was perfect and cohesive? That Corley touchdown, that he wasn't a touchdown because he dropped the ball. If he holds on to that ball, could have been listed and shown as an eye of what a real team looks like. Every guy did their job. Every guy. And I'm sure there are other plays that are like that. But, part of being a great football team is consistency. You have to do that every play. It can't just be a few plays, we all did our job. And it seems like that's the problem with this team. It seems like sometimes it's 9 guys do a great job and 2 guys just fuck it up. And it's just been that way for us. And I think the way that you get everybody to consistently do the good job and get that consistency, that has to fall on the coaches. That's discipline. It's practice. It's discipline. I mean, we're so bad. Yeah, we have this talent, but we can't tackle. How could we sit there and say we're a talented defensive roster? We have a lot of talent, but they can't tackle? Isn't that, what does that mean even? Like, if you can't tackle, is that coaching or talent or both? Like, I always thought if I'm watching kids play Little League football and I'm saying who has the talent, and there's one kid that's able to tackle everyone and the other kids are just being dragged around and not able to tackle, I'm not picking those kids as the kids with the talent. I'm picking the kid that tackles. Our team can't tackle. We see it. 20 missed tackles yesterday. 20 missed tackles. 10 days rest. Must-win game. 20 missed tackles. And I understand why Sauce got a little fed up with Samini's comment, because it's everybody's pointing to that Sauce play. And that was a horrible play because there was still a chance at 14 and the score's 14-6. We stop them there, get the ball back. We could score a touchdown, we were thinking, right? Or we could be right back in it. We could be make it a closer game. But here's the thing. I think it was kind of proven the entire second half that we weren't going to score there if we got the ball back. Like, we weren't. Now, you could talk about momentum and say everything would have been different. Come on. Then I could point to 20 plays that could have turned the momentum and been different. So was it an ugly play? Was it an inexcusable play of not being able to tackle? And was it disgusting? Yes. But are we going to sit there and say we lost the game because of that one play? We lost the game because we suck. We lost the game because we're a terrible football team. Because even with that play by Sauce, the team, a good team, still would have regrouped. A good team still would have found a way to hold them to a field goal. A good team wouldn't have been down 14-6. Like, we had already given up the 2 touchdowns. They walked down the field. And then they proceeded to score every other drive. They had the ball until the end. So we got to stop the nonsense. Yes, Sauce fucked up. But to sit there and blame the game and next week for Rich Samidi to put out a post that says, a lot of bad plays, a lot of missed tackles. The most costly one was Sauce. Nah, the most costly one. Come on. Are we really going to say that? What about the one where we had the ball near the end zone and Aaron Rodgers threw a pass to nobody? That kind of hurt too, didn't it? A touchdown would have been nice there, wouldn't it? Having a quarterback that could score in the red zone would be nice, wouldn't it? I know he has a little bit this year, but he has multiple games where he doesn't. Multiple games where he's not been a good quarterback. So is he the best we've had? Very low bar, yes. Is he a really good quarterback? He's about the 23rd best quarterback in the NFL. That's 23 out of 32. If you want to sit there and scream that he's still a great quarterback, you can. But I just, please, he needs to go. We need to start rebuilding. What is this? Ahmad is only 143 pounds, 6'3". He's soft and makes excuses. Yeah, Jeremy, do you think Rogers lost his mojo? Snacks. I think that he why are you beating a dead horse? 22 missed tackles. The game was over, and it was 7-0 team. No heart is going to give the season over. Save your energy. Save my energy. We're just venting, bro. Energy. I'm just venting. I don't know what the hell. Do I think Rogers lost his mojo? I think that Rogers is 41 years old. And I think that everybody got it in their head because Tom Brady was able to play into his 40s and forgot that that was an extreme outlier. That was like an extreme outlier. Very few NFL quarterbacks, most of them at 35, 36, start to go downhill very quickly. Most. So we're living in this an imaginary world where we just assumed he wouldn't get worse. Let's look at the 2021 Aaron Rodgers. Look at the 2022 Aaron Rodgers. And look at the 2024 Aaron Rodgers and build a graph on his performance. It is this. It is a stock that's plummeting. Okay? The overall stats don't lie. We made excuses in 2022, his last year in Green Bay for him. He had a broken thumb. He didn't have receiver. Look at me. Look at 2021. Look at 2022. And look at 2024, because obviously he missed a year. And make a graph. Yards per game, efficiency, and then consider his age. What does it take to make you understand that Aaron Rodgers is declining very quickly? And the fact that people think he's going to come back next year with a new coach and magically be good at 42 years old? Can we stop? He is clearly a guy that needs to have retired. He's just not the guy. He wasn't able to do it. One person, maybe there's another, and I'm forgetting, but there's one guy we all know very well who played into his 40s and did well, and that was Tom Brady. One guy. And we're just magically assuming because A-Rod had a good career that he'd be able to do it too. I'm sorry. Are you watching? He can't do it. He's not the same guy. He still might be better than some other guys, but all that speaks to is what a bad league it is for quarterback and how hard it is to find functional quarterbacks. That's all we've proven. We've proven that it's really hard to find quarterbacks. There aren't enough quarterbacks for the amount of teams that can function in this league. That's what we've proven. So just because Aaron Rodgers is not the worst, just because he's better than Zach Wilson, doesn't mean that he's still got it and that we should go in and play him next year. He's getting significantly worse every year he plays. Significantly worse. He's spiking down. Like, why are we being delusional about this? If his name wasn't Rodgers on his jersey and it was just some random name, some guy we picked up, Michael Wilson or Mike Adam, I don't know, I'm going to make up a name. I don't know, what's the name? John Hancock. Okay? First guy to sign the Declaration of Independence. John Hancock. That's his name. Imagine we had a guy named Hancock who's doing exactly what Aaron Rodgers is doing right now. Let's say we just picked up a guy. He was a backup for a team. He showed he had some good, like a Minshew. Let's say his name was Minshew. Let's say we had signed Minshew. And right now, Minshew has the same exact performance as Aaron Rodgers, same exact numbers. Are we happy? Are we happy? Okay? And let me tell you something. The difference with Minshew is he might believably be able to put up those numbers for another 5 years. So you might say, oh, I think he's good enough if we put the right team around him, but we have to build and fix things. But A-Rod is 41. There's no time to do that. We have to take the $49 million hit. We have to take it. We have to take it. Boom. Because who cares? Do you really think we're winning a Super Bowl next year? Who cares about next year? Who cares? We're not winning next year. The culture in this locker room is way too broken. We don't even have a general manager. We don't have a head coach. We have nothing. The whole office is going to be gone. We're going to be bringing in a whole new team. We have 30 free agents leaving the team. We get 30 guys. How many of them are we going to sign? We're not winning next year anyway. What is the point? Take the hit. Eat the $49 million while we have this window to do it. The most beautiful thing, And Tom C will tell you, and Frankie was saying it yesterday, we could accelerate the cap impact of Aaron Rodgers to 1 year. Take the punch next year. Because anybody you want to sign, it doesn't matter. You know that you can manipulate the money. We don't need money if we extend Garrett Wilson for next year. The contract could be laden and be heavy at the end of that contract in 27, 28, 29. We don't need money next year. Unless we were competing to win and we wanted to sign guys and bring in guys. But that's not our situation. We're not going to have a new coach come in, a new GM come in with the attitude of we got to win the Super Bowl this year. It's not happening. This team is so freaking broken. It's way beyond broken to think that we're going to compete next year. Take the $49 million hit now. Wash yourself clean of Aaron Rodgers now. If he has another year of being the 23rd, 24th best quarterback, let him do it somewhere else. But clean our hands. Wash our hands of it. We got to wash our hands of it. We've got to accept it. It's time to start over. We could take the core. My big thing is the offensive line. Because in 3 or 4 years from now, if we do rebuild, I want an offensive line that's played together. I want the core of the offensive line to have 3 or 4 years together. We could do that with Simpson, Tippmann, and Olu. And possibly AVT, if he earns the job, if he stays healthy the rest of the way and plays well next year, maybe we retain him. Then you could have at least 3 guys, maybe 4 guys for the future. And then in 27, 28, if we do got the right GM and we did bring in a good coach and we kept the core players like Garrett Wilson and everything, maybe we put ourselves in a position where we could be a really good football team. And most importantly, our offensive line will be an offensive line, a unit that has been together and knows how to play together. Like the Steelers have done over years and years. They've had to retool it. Now they're getting it retooled. Like Baltimore did it for a bunch of years. They had to retool it. Now they're getting it retooled. But look at winning teams like New England in the years that they were winning 5 great years in a row. Look at teams that made runs for years in a row. Look at our own team in 2007, 8, 9, 10. Look at our offensive line. Look at 98 with Parcells when he got that unit together. It's so consistent and it's so common that teams that make really good runs that are really good for a long time have offensive lines that play together year after year after year with as little changes as possible. I mean, it's just look at the data. It's there. It can't be argued when it's data, when it's aggregated data over a long period of time with multiple teams. It's impossible to argue. If we cut Rodgers now, the dead cap goes away in the future years. If we cut Rodgers now or next year at the offseason, or if he retires, we could take all $49 million and eat it in 2025 and can be completely clean in 2026. If we don't, I think Rodgers it's broken into 2 years. So it's like 25 million or whatever it is next year. And then in 26, it's 35 million. I really don't want to have a $35 million handicap in 2026 if we can get rid of that and address it in 2025. Right? Because we're rebuilding. Why would we want to have 2026 be handcuffed with a $35 million a year? Because there is a chance that we keep the right players, a good coach comes in, with a good general manager brings in a good coach, there is a chance that we could be a playoff team as early as 2026. Very possible. New guys come in, 2025, the roster's not as strong, bridge quarterback, but maybe the culture is different. Maybe we win 6 to 8 games because we have a good coach and we still have some talent there. They learn to play as a unit, right? We learn what's good, what's bad. Our draft picks develop the next year. We have plenty of cap space in 2026. We bring in the help that we need in some of the holes. And suddenly now, let's say we're this team that could go 10-7 and make the playoffs, right? All this while hunting for a quarterback. I'm not saying all this is likely, but I mean, it's the most realistic path to being a playoff team. I don't see a more realistic path than that. It's not going to happen with this locker room the way it is. It's not. They're losers. It's a loser mentality. They're not going to suddenly magically win. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't matter. There's 30 free agents, and a lot of them are going to be running out the door. Running out the door. This is not a situation where if we offer and match the other teams, they're going to then take our offer. We're not in that situation. We're in a situation where most guys say money, even money, will leave for a better situation. Mike Williams is so happy right now, probably. Can you imagine how happy Mike Williams is? He went from our Seth pool to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are going to be in the playoffs, to a real coach, to a real structure, to a good locker room, to a respectable organization. He left the biggest joke in the world. You don't think the other Jets are looking and are jealous of that? You don't think there are multiple players in our locker room that are saying, boy, I wish that was me? That get to be in a real place and not this freaking cesspool. Mike Williams is drinking beer, that expensive champagne, yeah. So, I mean, I know people say, oh, we can find good offensive linemen. We're going to need a right tackle. But, like, you got to stop thinking we're just going to draft OL every year. We have 3 that we could lock up. You got to lock them up. You got to lock them up. We need an offensive line where 5 guys could play together for 5 years. That's the dream. Anytime you find that situation, it's a good football team and a good offense. Anytime. Find me a team that was horrible offensively, a bad football team that's horrible on offense, that has the same offensive line for 5 years. It won't happen. It will not happen. It's not just getting good offensive linemen. It's about getting good offensive linemen, developing offensive linemen together as a unit, creating a good offensive line unit. It has to be. We've seen it now. We came into this season individually thinking, oh, everyone's a good player, and the offensive line looked like shit. Doesn't work. It's not just being good players. It's being a unit that knows how to play together. So it starts with a new GM. Or a vice president of operations would be even better, right? It would be great if Woody replaced himself. Like, you're the VP of operations, you're in charge of everything. Go out, find your general manager, have that general manager find their coach. Everything needs to be the choice of the person in the position. The VP is responsible for hiring the good GM. The GM is responsible for hiring the coach and the personnel and all that stuff. You have to have the hierarchy. You have to have the hierarchy, and everybody in that hierarchy has to be qualified and competent in their job. Am I giving up on JD? I think JD has potential to be good somewhere else, but I'm giving him up on him for now. I don't believe that that it's impossible for JD to be a good GM in the future, because in every job in the world, you could develop, you could learn, you can gain experience. He was young. This was his first shot. He did some good things. He did some really bad things. He also did things we don't know, because we don't know what was Woody and what was him. But do I think that JD could go back to being an assistant somewhere, learn a couple of things, and eventually be a GM again in 7 years down the road and end up being a really good GM? I think that he has some raw talent and skills to do it. I think he makes good trades sometimes, like value. He understands money and controlling the cap. Everything before Rodgers came, he had really good control over money. He cleaned up the cap originally. He seems to be able to find some talent in the draft. He's made mistakes. His biggest mistakes were coaching. He picked the wrong coach, and he missed at quarterback. If he could fix those 2 things, suddenly everything's different, right? Because if he picked a better coach, different locker room, different culture. And if he picked a better quarterback, or would have, traded down and stayed with Darnold and eventually found someone else or whatever, great coach, great culture, and the better team. So I've given him up. I've given up I've given up on JD as the Jets GM. He needs a new fresh start. He needs to go. He needs to be an assistant again. He needs to work his way back up. There's a good chance he's going to make us all look foolish or feel foolish and be very successful. But I won't, because I'll say at the time it was the right thing to do. We need to move on from JD. It would be great if Cohn would buy the Jets, but Woody won't sell. Hire Tony Dungy to run things VP. I would love that. I think Tony Dungy would be a great guy to hire. He, but if you do want, and thank you for the super chat, Arbiv, I appreciate it. I think that if you did bring in Tony Dungy, understand one thing: you can't be a Tony Dungy guy and be a Rex Ryan guy. Like if you hire Tony Dungy to be your VP, there's no Rex Ryan. I'm just saying. I just want to be very clear about that. You're not going to see Rex Ryan coaching the Jets ever in any capacity if Tony Dungy is our VP, because those two do not click. I don't know if any of you remember that, but Tony Dungy had a problem with Rex when he watched Hard Knocks with Rex Ryan. Tony Dungy was very outspoken about how inappropriate he felt Rex Ryan's language was. So that just made me. I just had a. I remembered that when I saw the name Tony Dungy with all the talk of Rex Ryan. Those two are not going to ever be together in one on one team. I want a fresh start. I want a fresh start for him. I think that JD, the kind of job he did, is a go back to being an assistant and then taking another shot in the future at being a GM. I would never sit here and say he can never develop into a good GM, because it's not like he came in here and everything he did was a disaster. It's not. He just missed on two important things. The Zach Wilson, over half the GMs in the league in that spot with the need of quarterback would have made that pick. So you can only hold it against him so much. It was still the mistake. He wasn't a great GM that avoided it. But, at least he didn't trade up and take Trey Lance. It could have been worse. And he messed up on coach. He messed up on coach, and it was, it's a very hard thing when you're limited, when you're not hiring a proven entity, when you're taking a really good coordinator and you're hiring them as a coach. It's not easy. There's no magical formula to know if they're going to be good, and he just missed. He missed, and you see that Salah's a really good talker. He did come around and turn our defense around and gave us a great defense for 2 years. So there was a lot that he did right. He just couldn't do the thing that's really hard to predict that he was going to do. There was no way to see that as a GM. It's hard to really see that this guy's going to come in and not be able to run a locker room and not be able to create a winning culture and, not be hard enough on the players and the thing that the really frustrating thing about Salah is that he would pick and choose. I'm going to be hard on this guy, but I'm going to lick this guy's ass. He was terrified of the veterans. Like Robert Saleh was not a strong enough coach to handle veterans. He was like a yes sir to veterans, and he picked on the young guys. And that just doesn't work. You have to be consistent. You have to be the top guy. Rex Ryan comes into that locker room. Bill Parcells came into that locker room. Andy Reid, when he walks into that locker room, nobody's above him. Everybody shuts up and listens. Nobody adds on and starts talking like they're equal to him when he's talking. And that, believe me, that's not the case in the Jets locker room. I agree, Harlan. At the end of the day, JD just missed on some big things. But it doesn't mean he could never be a good GM. Like you never know. He might get a job as a GM and make the right choice in coach. Maybe that team will already have a good quarterback. Like maybe there'll be a horrible team that has the number one pick and the number one guy is a winner, right? Maybe it's the year Archie Manning or whatever it is. Maybe the guy maybe it's just a can't miss quarterback that you end up getting. There's no such thing as a can't miss. But maybe it just happens to work out. Everybody thought that Lawrence was a can't miss, Trevor Lawrence. And, he's not like a complete bust where he can't play football, but he's a miss. Obviously, it wasn't what we thought he could be or what people want him to be. Caleb Williams looks like a miss, and that's not a surprise at all. I didn't even have him as my number one last year. I didn't have him in my top three. So not surprised about Caleb Williams at all. So there is no guarantee. But guys, I'm going to go. I'm going to head out. Appreciate you guys hanging out. And that's my take on it. They broke my heart. I'm already brokenhearted. I'm already broken. I'm not saying rebuild as anger, though. I'm saying it very reflectively and very thoughtfully. Like, so this is not emotion. I honestly don't believe that this team could be fixed and patched up for next year. I think that train is long gone. This is a full rebuild, guys. This is a start over. We need a change of culture. We need a lot of changes in our personnel. A lot has to change. And as sad as it is to say, I'm rooting for Aaron Rodgers to just retire and make it a nice clean parting. Let's take the $49 million hit next year, and at the end of next season, a year from now, looking forward, we don't have to worry about it or think about it. We'll have plenty of cap space to rebuild a football team. Sad to say, guys, I thought this rebuild was it. I thought 3 years ago I was excited. I built up all this hope for 3 or 4 years. It didn't happen. We missed. So there's nothing we could do about it now except move forward. Take care, everyone. Thanks.